When the Raptors lost point guard Fred VanVleet to free agency, we weren't exactly thrilled when it was revealed that Dennis Schroder would be his replacement, but if the German point guard can produce anything like he's doing at the FIBA World Cup, then maybe it'll be a lot better than we think. So, what version of Dennis Schroder can we really expect to come to Toronto? Let's get into it. There's something very, very strange that goes on when certain players go to FIBA competitions. Specifically for this summer, it is the FIBA World Cup that is ongoing, and one of those players who just has a knack for rising up to these FIBA competitions when he is representing his country is Dennis Schroder. And a few hours ago, we saw the German national team beat Team USA in the semifinals to advance to the World Cup final, take on Serbia, who unfortunately also eliminated Canada this morning. But a big reason why Germany are headed to that World Cup final is the outstanding play of Dennis Schroder. He is the lead player on that team, especially given that Franz Wagner has been dealing with injuries so far in this tournament. And though he was back for the semifinal and did play very well, it was Dennis Schroder who delivered the goods all throughout the game and delivered the goods when it counted most. The U.S. were making an almighty comeback late in the fourth quarter when a step back dagger mid-range shot by Dennis Schroder put the game out of reach and locked in Germany to their first ever World Cup final appearance. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with that World Cup final that is going to take place on Sunday again between Germany and Serbia, but we do know one thing: Dennis Schroder is likely going to hit the ground running when it comes to the Raptors preseason when he returns to play with the team and get set for his first season as a Toronto Raptor. So, the Raptors ended up using their mid-level exception to get Dennis Schroder once they lost Fred VanVleet in free agency to the Houston Rockets. The reality was we wanted to keep Fred VanVleet, but we were not going to go anywhere near the caliber of money the Houston Rockets were offering the player. Max money, $43 million a year or so for Fred VanVleet. Instead, we opted to use about $12.5 million a year for 2 years to get Dennis Schroder on the books. Now, there's no disputing it. There's no argument here. Straight up, one for one, Dennis Schroder is a downgrade to Fred VanVleet. Raptors fans are very much hoping that Dennis Schroder can keep this team afloat, and Raptors fans are very much hoping that we can make up the loss of Fred VanVleet by committee with all the other players in the team. Maybe Scottie Barnes getting some more touches, OG Anunoby getting some more touches, and even Pascal Siakam coming off of another all-star season, even him getting a bit more touches and a bit more usage, and maybe even elevating his game to the next level. But we are expecting some big things out of Dennis Schroder. There's still conversations that need to go on about what his role is going to be as far as starting or being the sixth man coming off of the bench. I've been going back and forth on this one, but the longer I go now into the summer, the more I feel as though that head coach Darko Rajakovic, who has experience in coaching Schroder in the past in his time with the Oklahoma City Thunder, it feels as though if Darko was big on recruiting Schroder and had those conversations with Schroder that convinced him to come to Toronto, then it feels as though Rajakovic is bringing in Dennis to be the starting point guard for the Toronto Raptors. Likely going to see a starting five of Schroder, OG, Barnes, Siakam, and Pirtle. So we need some big things to come out of Schroder, especially for the shoes he is trying to fill with the team. And even though I was, specifically myself, a little bit dejected after the free agent season, a little bit dejected after losing Fred VanVleet and knowingly we replaced him with Dennis Schroder. Again, a downgrade in the position, whichever way you look at it. There's an inferior defender, an inferior scorer, an inferior playmaker. Dennis Schroder is a fine point guard. He's an average point guard in the NBA, in my opinion, but he is definitely not Fred VanVleet. But how does he rise up to these levels in FIBA competition? And can he bring these levels in any way whatsoever to the Toronto Raptors? Let's take a look at what Dennis Schroder produced last season with the Los Angeles Lakers, where he got decent amounts of minutes and was a big part of the reason why they made a run near the end of the season, ended up getting to the conference finals. Dennis Schroder averaged 12.6 points per game, along with 4.5 assists, 2.5 rebounds with a field goal percentage of 41.5. That was coupled with a three-point percentage in the low 30s. Dennis Schroder is definitely not a floor spacer, and though Fred VanVleet also shot in the lower 30s for three-point percentage, Fred VanVleet's volume was way higher and therefore was a lot more significant to the team and provided a lot more to the team than what Dennis Schroder can do. And if you look at the effective field goal percentages as well, they don't really compare in those areas. But where it's different is what Dennis Schroder is producing for Germany at the FIBA World Cup so far. The player has been absolutely sensational and is the catalyst in Germany getting this far in the competition, potentially winning the competition, because he's averaged 18 points per game, 6.7 assists, 2 rebounds on 41.8% shooting from the field and 33% shooting from three. So some stellar numbers for Dennis Schroder, but how is he able to produce this here? And why is he not produced this in the NBA as of yet? Well, FIBA competitions, we all know, are very different. There's some different rules, and the court is a little bit smaller. This smaller court is actually a very, very big deal, and this is why some bigs who maybe struggle in the NBA can produce really great things at the FIBA World Cup. Like, these gritty bigs are so influential on their teams. Like, take Willy Hernangomez for Spain, for example. If you've been an NBA fan for a while, you know Willy Hernangomez, who has had some time in the NBA, but never really was able to lock down a rotation role anywhere. But he was spectacular at the FIBA World Cup because with this smaller court, it's easier for these bigs to maneuver the court. They can occupy more space easily on the court and therefore can be better help defenders and don't get caught in space against more nimble and more shifty players as they would in the NBA. The FIBA game is a lot more of a team-oriented game rather than an individual-oriented game, just like the NBA. And this really suits Dennis Schroder's game. Number one, he's playing within a team unit that suits him a little bit better. Number two, the game is, even though it's a smaller court, is a little bit slower, and he reacts really well to those help defenders to hit those mid-range shots, just as he did to hit that dagger against the U.S. to put Germany in the World Cup final. Also, with these FIBA competitions, I mean, you're seeing Dennis Schroder playing against some weaker competition. Now, we did not see that absolutely against the U.S. He played against some remarkable competition, but in other games leading up to this point in the competition, because Dennis Schroder, in this specific game, yes, it was some wonderful numbers against the U.S. as well. 17 points, 9 assists on some great shooting, 66% from the field and 43% from three. Some great numbers here, but as far as the averages go, this was pretty damn near his average. In fact, a little bit above in some specific spots. He rose up to the occasions. But for the most part, FIBA competitions, it's weaker competition than your day-to-day ventures in the NBA. Not to mention that your team yourself is likely a weaker team than you would have as an NBA group. Therefore, he's getting way more touches. So we can look at the efficiency. In the NBA last season, it was about 41% shooting, low 30s for three. And in this competition so far, despite averaging 17 points per game, he's shooting 41% from the field and low 30s for three. So what's different about these FIBA competitions is that, specifically for Schroder, he's just getting more of the touches because he's a superior player to a lot of what Germany have. Like, Germany have a great team, but he is a lead player for this team. And with all due respect to these FIBA teams in the FIBA tournaments, this is not a team that would thrive in the NBA. So Dennis Schroder is getting these extra touches, but it's really, really good to see that with the addition of the volume that we're seeing with him, he is still maintaining these efficiency levels. And sure, the three-point line is a little bit shorter for these threes, but I don't think that's going to make a ton of a difference. The reality is these guys are stepping out a couple feet beyond the three-point line a lot of the time anyway to hit these shots. But upping the volume and maintaining your efficiency is a good sign to see. So what can we expect from him in Toronto? Well, I think what we're going to need to see as far as getting the most out of his abilities and most out of the team's abilities is we're going to need a lot of guys to chip in on the shooting front. Fred VanVleet took a ton of threes for this team, and though it was a little bit inefficient last season, the spacing was still respected by opposition defenses, which allowed other players to have that more space on the interior. Losing Fred VanVleet, all of that volume shooting, and replacing with Schroder, that's going to sacrifice some shooting. So we really need to make up a lot of shooting by committee here. Hopefully, Scottie Barnes can trend upwards with his three-point percentage instead of downwards like he did last season. I believe he can get up to 33-ish% shooting from three, especially the open ones. We just got to be able to get those down if you're Scottie Barnes, those open three-point opportunities. Hopefully, this is an up year for Pascal Siakam as far as shooting goes. Hopefully, OG has added in a little bit more movement for his ability to shoot the threes, and I'm expecting big things to come out of Gary Trent Jr. off the bench, and we're very much hoping for big things to come from Grady Dick, recent 13th overall pick in the draft in the shooting department. And we're also hoping, hey, Dennis Schroder's playing with Toronto here, a team that is not as good as the Lakers were and doesn't have the ball-dominant players like LeBron and AD on their team. So naturally, some more touches, especially if he's starting, are going to come to Schroder this season. So I'm still a little bit disappointed that the one-for-one switch from losing Fred VanVleet was getting Dennis Schroder. I felt like there were some better options out there that Masai Ujiri really could have made a run for, and it felt like the Raptors weren't really prepared for Fred VanVleet leaving and kind of rushed into making this decision with Dennis Schroder. But I'm a little bit more optimistic now from what we're seeing with Schroder here, because when he does get the touches, when he is provided with the ability to run the offense a little bit, we're seeing some positive things. We saw it here at the FIBA World Cup, but we've also seen in the past in the NBA. I mean, yes, he is the all-time bag fumbler for not taking that 4-year, $84 million contract that the Lakers offered him, 3 or 4 years ago now, when he had a wonderful season there, ended up instead getting a minimum deal with the Boston Celtics the year later when he bet on himself to earn a bigger contract. But there is a reason why he got that big contract offer. Yes, it was a bit of an overpay even for that time, $84 million over 4 years, but the Lakers saw some really good things in that player. They saw a point guard who could orchestrate the offense for the team that had LeBron James and had Anthony Davis as a part of it. So there's clear signs that Dennis Schroder is a talented player. What he's going to be able to bring to the Raptors, I think he's going to bring a bit more than what he brought from the Lakers, a lot less than what he brought for Team Germany here at the FIBA World Cup, but I think we can expect an improvement from Schroder, knowing where he stands, knowing what his role is, and having the confidence to execute and get more touches, especially under a coach he's familiar with in Darko Rajakovic. So, won't be quite the level we're getting with Germany, but I think we're going to get a bit more than we expected, maybe quite a bit more than I expected out of the player, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in a Toronto Raptors uniform. So what do you guys make of Dennis Schroder? What do you think he produced for the Raptors this season? This is my final video, by the way, in my parents' house. I'm back in my apartment for next week, so please make sure for those videos you are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoyed this one, please make sure to smash that like button. I'll see you again very, very soon.